Good morning. So, it's been a while since I made a video, obviously. Don't need to tell you that. Probably don't care. That's fine too. Um, but I've just been having some thoughts lately. And the other day I was like, okay, I need to make a video. And then this morning I was like, wow, I really need to make a video. Now, let's pray that the Lord um, helps me remember everything that I'm supposed to say because I really don't. And I didn't write anything down. So, um, let me maybe start backwards. Okay, so this morning, like I was listening to Psalms during the night, and when I woke up, I was on Psalms 22, which is the my God, why have you forsaken me?" Psalm, and it had been a while since I heard the whole thing through, and I hadn't realized that that was the same psalm that it's like one of my favorites. One of my favorite phrases in it. It says something like. Um, You have been my God since I was in the womb, or something like that. And I did not realize that that was the same psalm, which like floored me. And then also, um, there's a part where it says, it talks about him being mocked and, ridiculed and, all this stuff. And they say, let his God save him if he's uh, so, since he delights in him so much. It's like let his God save him. And I was just like, it made me realize like not only was Jesus on the cross and unable, what appeared to look like he was unable to save himself, um, but it also looked like God wasn't even co-signing this whole thing. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And it really solidified to me. It was like, God's not even expecting y'all to like. He's not even making it for y'all to believe this. Like he's really making this a faith, literally faith only thing. Like he doesn't even want you to intellectually do this. And I mean, yeah, are there things that you can, because Paul says that you should be able to defend your faith, and there are things that you can use there still. But I think we rely on that too much. Either that or maybe we're not relying on it, but it's like, look how God himself tried to conceal this from your brain. So don't be too concerned with, oh, well, we should be able to intellectually defend our faith to anyone. And anyone should just, and if you have all the right facts, then you'll be able to believe this. It's that simple. And it's like, no, he literally had Jesus up there. Not only was Jesus not, not saving himself, but God was letting him go through it. And then, immediately afterwards, the signs started happening. And then you've got, people going, oh, snap. I think did we just crucify? But that's because God needed everyone to go through that, or he needed Jesus to do that, and he needed to do that uninterrupted so that the sacrifice could be done. But once it was done, it was like, okay, like let's, the curtain is torn, the veil is torn, people getting up out of the graves, you know, peals of thunder, lightning, the sky is darkened, all that stuff. But yeah, I was just like, wow, that is. But how scary it is when God gives you all of the evidence that what you are doing is right, and then it totally reverses on you, and now you're just stuck looking ridiculous. It's like, oh, you just spent all that time like ridiculing the Son of God. Like you can't even pretend like that wasn't where your heart was at. But anyway, so I was just thinking about that this morning. But like, what I've been thinking about the past couple days, my cousin gave me a copy of The Purpose Driven Life, which I had never read. I just heard about, and just assumed that it was, gospel basics or whatever, or whatever. I mean, I think that the implication was always that it was sort of like a light version of what Christians believe, because it was just spreading like wildfire, and everybody just assumed that it was like this weird, or I don't think anyone assumed. I think there was a rumor that it was just a lot of like watered down new agey stuff. Well, I read it and it's just like not any of that. And it was like a fantastic outline that I'm just like, wow, this is great. And if I'd have known this book exists, I wouldn't have made all these videos. Like, it was like, this is fantastic. What are we talking about? So I felt really, I was a little bit embarrassed about that, because it's actually a really solid book, and everybody who doesn't like it is haters, or they don't understand people or God or anything. But it got me to thinking about certain things, and I don't even know how to really like lay out what I was thinking. Like, the main idea that I was thinking about was how well, let me start with that. So a lot of people like get caught up with the free will thing, and it's like, oh well, because the very first chapter of that book, which I was like, I need to reread this like every day, because it was just going over like the complete sovereignty of God, and basically like how God created everything, and he created everything, he knows everything, he's got everything under his complete control. Everything that you have ever done, he has, planned since the beginning of the foundation of the world and all this stuff. And it's just like going over all of that information about God was really a good refresher, because I think we let the world sort of um, wear some of that away, and then you forget like how much God has it in his control, and just like how absolute it is. And it gets people tripped up, because it's like, well, then what do I do? What am I doing? And like, I don't have any free will. And we are misunderstanding or mischaracterizing what free will even is, because we don't understand what this world is. We think that God creating this world is just literally just that. And it's like he made a book or a movie or something. And so, and we're just in it like this. And it's like, oh, well, if I have lines, then what am I even doing? Like, am I even, we think of it like that. It's like, oh, well, he's writing my dialogue. It's like, that's not what it is. It's like the fact that you can influence anything is the testament to your free will. Like, because God got this thing on lockdown. So the fact that you can alter anything is evidence that you have free will. So an example of it would be like the story of, when Moses says, when Moses is in the wilderness, and God decides that he is going to start over with Moses and wipe out everybody. He's like, I'm just going to wipe out everybody. Now, God absolutely had the power to do that. And I find it funny, or interesting, that God would even bring this up to him. It indicates maybe that either God was wanting to see what Moses would say about it, or it like actually is a great example of what we're talking about in terms of like what God intends, because God could have just did it, and Moses was like, what happened? He's like, I got rid of everybody, I'm starting over with you. Like, how wild would that have been? How wild would it have been if he did that, and like that to me, that reeks of a human story. But like, if it was like God just did it, and God was like, and Moses was like, "What did you just do?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got rid of everybody." And then Moses said, "No, no, no, no. What about this and that?" And then God was like, "Okay," and he put everybody back. I mean, I don't know. It's just funny because it's just, it's not really like if I read that, I'd be like, because that's not God's personality. Like I've read enough stuff to know like God is gonna like pre do anything. He's not really gonna do stuff and then have to like back up and then redo that. Like, um, but he goes, I want to wipe them all out. He tells Moses that's what he's gonna do. And then Moses says, "Well, no, if you do that, then everybody's going to be like, oh, God, like this God brought him out in the wilderness to kill him, blah, blah, blah." So he had the free will to reason with God and give him this whole thing. And just because God knew what Moses was going to say, or knew that, this conversation was going to happen or whatever, doesn't mean that Moses doesn't have free will, or that God created Moses to have the intellect and the type of mind and heart to argue that. Doesn't mean that Moses did not have free will. It just means that God has created everything, down to the scenario to make things happen. So so it's like that. It's not about like, oh well, I should be able to, if I jump out this window, then whatever. It's just like, if people just take it too far, they make it just about this place and not about, it's like you're an eternal being. So it's not about just this earth part. Um, and a lot of it is because God's doing a thing here right now. So it seems like, and because we're not privy to heaven, we don't see angels or demons. We can't like do the things that we're going to be able to do in heaven. So it just seems like this whole thing seems like a particularly elaborate setup, and that's actually not wrong. And the other thing that I was thinking about with that, which is like the primary thing that have been really um, seeing and realizing, is that the the idea of God causes an immediate tension, and we tend to think that it's like, especially as a Christian, it's like this idea that Christianity, or even just monotheism, any type of theism, was like the default idea. And then it was like science came in and the Enlightenment period came in, and all these things sort of eroded that. And the idea was that um, people stopped being willing to um, check their brain at the door. So this idea that at a certain point, the concept of God can get too outlandish. And so you get these people that are like, well, I believe there's a higher power, but I don't believe that this and that and that. Or I believe that there's that God exists, but I don't think he's a person that feels this way or that way, or does this or that. And the reality is that the concept of God existing causes an immediate tension immediately, that God is using to call forth the actual people of God. And even that first story that I was telling you about, Jesus on the cross, not only unable to save himself, seemingly, but that God like didn't even know this dude. It's like this thing, he doesn't want anybody who does not belong to him anywhere near him. Like that is such an intentional, like this whole thing is so intentional. It's so intentionally uh like tense for the mind. So this idea that, which is what we believe, that God created everything. He knows everything you're going to do before you do it. He knows this. He knew you before you even, I mean, it literally says this in the Bible. Like it would sound like some made up stuff that we're just going way too deep into if it didn't say that he knew us from the foundation of the world before everything was created, that he had already created us. That is a wild idea, first of all. That's an incredibly wild idea. So that creates a tension that's like, okay, so if you're going to go along with that idea, then it's like, okay, so those wildfires and those tornadoes, that's all you. And that baby with that defect is all you. And that person who, born blind that's all you. And that's like the first thing that people instantaneously go to. And you have to be willing to accept that. You have to be willing to accept that. Oh, this person got better, but this person didn't. This person just starved to death in the closet for no reason. And they were a church member. Like they let their kid starve and nobody knew about it. Like, so you've got all of these things in life. And, people tend to view it as like the height of, intellectual whatever, that you don't just accept that idea, which makes sense. It made sense like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. But things are too weird now. It's like the intellectual train is not dropping people off anymore. Like it's not, it's just as weird as it would be if people believed in God or multiple gods. Like it hasn't made this place any more sane. You can literally just make fake arguments and lead people off into whole generations of insanity. And then also, you got people just appealing to your subconscious and leading you around with that, and just using subliminal messaging and this and that, and pretending like everything is rational, and then leaving your subconscious just as weak as it can possibly be and just suggesting things to it on a nonstop basis. Like what's intellectual about suggestive messaging? Like I don't even think you can really, I mean, it's basically like sorcery, where they're just like putting things on the screen like at super high intervals, and just trying to inject that into your brain. Like what's intellectual about that? What's scientific about that? Oh, we showed that it worked. That's your science. Oh, we looked at the you could plot voodoo on a chart and probably see that people who use voodoo tend to have higher results of people being cursed. Like what are we talking about? So anyways, which is another thing. It's like, why aren't they doing that? Why aren't the scientists measuring? Let's get the tarot cards measured, and the voodoo measured, and the let's go through all these things that are still being practiced. But it's like, oh, that's not science's. That's not their what do you call it? Wheelhouse or whatever. But it's like, didn't we use science to debunk religion? So go debunk the rest of it, unless y'all are all in cahoots. Because Christianity will show enough got some words about voodoo and tarot cards. It's like, okay, yeah, that's of the devil. So is that. Like, Christianity's got all of the reach. It's got all of the reach in all of the places. That's okay. That's okay. No, 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 no. Like, no problem. No problem. You could debate all day whether, like, that's right or not, or whether, your pastor and podunk whatever told you the right thing about, the Teletubbies. The reality is, Christianity has never had any like identity problems around its own authority. It's always been absolute. Like, and y'all can laughing at that, laughing and pointing and laughing doesn't change that reality. That no other group that wants to dethrone Christianity or dethrone believing in God has even close to that type of like, no one. You don't go. You see scientists going around. They're really, they pretend like, oh, this is beneath us, but it's really like, you don't have any authority here. It's like, oh, well, that's not scientific. Oh, well, okay. But they'll walk all up in your church, which is the last place that they ought to be allowed to go into, and tell you what's not real and this and that. It's like, bro, you can't even, you haven't even, the jury's still out with you on freaking crystal balls. Get out of here. Go examine animals and trees and stuff, which they don't even do that anymore. Now it's just like, let's theorize about stuff we don't even know, so that, whatever the government allows us to have a grant for is what we're going to study. Whatever they give us lots of money to study is what we're going to study. Like, that's where they're at right now. So it literally doesn't even matter. But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is that, yeah, there's a lot of tension right away with the idea that God exists. Right away. You're going to have to reconcile a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise. And that's much harder intellectually than to determine. It's like, okay, well, if I can't see it, then it doesn't exist. It's like, that is so lazy. If it can't be detected, then, if it can't be proven. So anyway, so yeah, there's right away, there's tension, and God is designing that. He wants to use that because that is where your faith begins. And I don't think it's a coincidence, or of course it's not, but I just think it's so appropriate that the concept of surrender is used so much, which on people on the outside, that could sound like some sort of, ploy to get you to stop using your brain. But it kind of is. It's not a ploy, though. It's an open, honest invitation to surrender to the information. So you go, okay, I don't fully understand it. I don't even know if I fully agree with all of God's choices. If He does in fact exist and is in control of everything, but I'm going to surrender to this sort of current. And it's so accurate, because as long as you have that, you've got that tension with God, and you're like fighting the tension. It's like, listen, God's going to break your teeth off. You need to just flow in that river, because you're not going to be able to fight that fight with God. It's like, God is going, sending this avalanche down on this village. And it's not even so much that He's doing that. Even if it's just, oh, He's allowing it to happen. How could He allow this to happen? How would He allow this to happen? And it's like, aside from the fact that this isn't just some freaking snow globe, this isn't just His diorama. Like, there's stuff going on. There's cosmic, eternal, spiritual things going on. There's angels and demons, and there's this whole thing going on. Aside from that, Um, this isn't just this thing where he's like, he's ensuring our safety just because we're born, just because we're here. And I think a lot of that gets lost because we sort of, that's the way that life is treated these days in modern culture. It's very much like, here's our little biodome bubble that we live in. And, we bring food in from the outside. We don't know where it comes from. We just go to these magic buildings and it's in there and we get what we need. It's like we're so removed from the immediate volatile nature of nature and animals and all of these things that are real. And if we didn't have any of this scaffolding, this infrastructure that we made, we would be dealing with. And we would be much more, I'm sure every once in a while somebody was like, what the F? Why are we doing this? And that's totally fine. But that's not just because you can do that, just because you can be meta, like on one level, doesn't mean that you're deeper than the concept of God. Like, there's no place you can go where God isn't already there, already doing something. So, yeah, this concept of this immediate tension right away, and then not only is it immediate tension right away, but it never stops. And I think that Christians, a lot of Christians, and the reason why there's so much carnage in a church is because I think Christians, some people, some humans who are Christian, tend to think, well, now I'm a believer, and so now the tension is gone. It's like, no, hello, do you know who you're dealing with? Like, the tension never goes away. It kind of like low key intensifies. So once you agree to surrender to this idea that God exists and that He has created everything up or down, good or bad, or however you tend to view that. Okay, now you're a believer. Okay, now you've got this person getting healed, this person not getting healed. You've got miracles, small miracles, big miracles, miracles things that people have been praying for, that they still haven't gotten, even though the Bible says, like, ask me, if you ask for anything in my name and I'll give it to you. And then uh, speaking in tongues. Well, that's real. That's not real. That's just some like weird thing. But like your best friend, who you know for a fact is not insane, is speaks in tongues, but that doesn't deter you. You're still not into it. And then all of these things, and then it's like, all these denominations and all of these factions, and it's like, that's how you get people who are just like, you know what, I'm out. They get they're expecting that initial tension of God being real. It's like, oh, now I know the truth, everything's fine now. It's like, no, this is God we're talking about. This is a guy who brought the Son of God down, the number one human of humans down, let him be on a cross, agreed with him. Listen, don't do anything. Just don't save yourself. Just we're in cahoots to make it look as gloomy and glum and ridiculous as possible. And then you find out later, oh, okay, this was about our salvation. And then you got the Holy Spirit and all these things happen afterwards. And it doesn't stay ridiculous forever. It's not like, oh, no, it's just this weird puzzle that you have to just, you have to just believe it forever. It's like, no, eventually the rest of the story came into focus. And that is what gave the disciples so much confidence, because it was like brought all the way down to like negative numbers and then sprung way up into the air after they saw the fulfillment of everything. And then if that wasn't enough, Jesus came back for 40 days straight, taught them, and breathed on them at the end of that whole shebang and said, receive the Holy Spirit. So now they've got this thing that I love the description. I love when Jesus is going in on, he's telling them like, I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit. Now, this is a person who the world literally can't even receive this person. They can't understand this person. Now, that's like God telling you this is going to sting a little. If God is preparing you, if God has to prepare you for the sting, if God, look at this world. If God has to prepare you for the sting, like forget it. You're barely going to, it's going to be insane. Because that's his level. He's God. Look at this world. Look at this world. One person created this whole thing. Mountains, earthworms. 90% of the ocean we still don't know about. It's too dark to, we don't know about it. Was it 90, 80? I forget what the percentage. I feel like it's 90. Yeah, 90% we got nothing. And the animals down there, they don't have the same limitations on air. So they could just grow infinitely to whatever size. That, yes, that God created this. Oh, well, yeah, God created, but not the God of the Bible. He's a weirdo. No. You stop trying to not find the tension when God is like putting the tension in your face. And the reason for the tension is so that the people who believe in God and who love God can be sort of, what do you call it, sifted out. Because the people who choose to get on this train want to be on this train. You know, this is just preliminaries. We're going to get rewarded. And that's the other thing. The reward is not like, it's not this, it's obviously, it's an incentive, but it's like a compensation, because it's like, it's, God is aware. He's like, yeah, I know this thing is like super weird. I'm doing a thing right now. And I'm going to, after this thing is over, you're going to be compensated for your cooperation. Like, this isn't pie in the sky. And I love how people like to attack like the Christianity on these multiple fronts, because it's like on one level it's ridiculous and it couldn't possibly be this and that, and then on another front it's like, this idea that you're just going to get to heaven, you're going to do all your good deeds, which is not even what it is, but that's what they say, because that's what they can't get past, the good deeds bad deeds thing. So it's like, oh, you're going to do your good deeds and you're going to get all this stuff. It's like, it sounds like a actually, no, it's not even so much the good deeds, bad deeds. Back in the day, it was, oh, you're going to sacrifice this, you're going to deal with that, and oh, God's going to reward you. I mean, that's the whole reason why, that's what literally changed like the Black community from Christian to not, basically. It's not, it's maybe Christian in some ways, it's just, it's like the way that Jewish people are Jews. It's like they're not worshiping God right now. They're just being Jewish. They're just being culturally Jewish. It's like, this idea that we're going to forgive the people who enslaved us and all this stuff. It's like, the idea is that is a trap, and that you're going to spend your entire life down here being stomped on, and then you're going to realize like, oh, that was a joke and none of it was real, which I don't know who would put you up to this joke. Oh no, yeah, I do now. I remember, because it's like the idea that the religion is made up. The religion is made up. It's the white man's religion. It's the opium of the masses. It keeps you, in line and stuff, and makes you. So it's just really this weird thing of like, who is exactly, like, are you paying attention to like who this is for, and like what, because it's like, when people start going after the Christians, it's like, why are we going after the opiate of the masses people? I thought they were like super compliant and whatever. So that, why are we trying to, and why is it so hard? Like, why are we having such a hard time? And why are we going full force at the people who should be the least? I thought these were the least dangerous people in the world. Like, I don't know if anybody's paying attention to, like, if the lies are matching up, or if the claims are matching up with what society is showing you. So the idea that men made this up so to keep people from fighting back, or to manipulate people into not doing anything, um, I don't know how old you have to be to realize, like, that's not possible. Like, no one can really do that. But it's convenient, and if you don't want to believe in God and you don't want to be scared about that, you can run to one of these other ideas and just say that over and over and over. But the reality is, and what I love about it too, it's not so much like God's telling you, listen, just be a pushover, and at the end of this life, I'm going to reward you for being a pushover, which would be enough. But what he's asking us to do is literally his personality. It's not like he's telling us to do some opposite thing that he's like empowering everybody else to do. But he's like, no, you Christians, you're going to be my special people. You're going to not do any of that stuff. But everybody else gets to be cool while you have to be lame. It's like, no, he is actually, we are being like him. And when we get to heaven, it's not like, yeah, when we get to heaven, we're going to be done with all this. We're going to be partying. We don't have to do any of this crap. It's like, no, we're going to be doing the same thing there too. But we're going to, like, naturally be inclined to do it. Here, we're not. Here, it is a struggle. And that is where the rewards come in. That is where it makes total sense. Like, all of these things that we think, it's not like, hey, if you pray, like, I'll give you stuff. Oh, I'll do miracles for you. It's not this thing like God's doing his flashy thing, like, hey, come join me, because if you do this, it's like, no, all of that is part of his compensation plan. It all ties in together. It's like, pray to me for everything that you need, because the world is in shambles right now. I'm doing a thing. I want to get as many people as possible. So in the interim, don't go off trying to get your own thing. Don't use witchcraft. Don't use this. Don't use that. All those things, you're not allowed to do this. Here are the things you are allowed to do that are considered holy that you can do. You can pray. You can lay hands on people. You can, you can speak in tongues. We're going to give some gifts out. You're going to have a preaching gift, prophecy, teaching, whatever. You can give. You can pray for your enemies if they're causing a problem. You can pray for your enemies. That's not just like, here's a super spiritual thing that you can do that's going to make you look super high and mighty. It's like, no, you're having a problem with this guy. Here's what you do. Don't touch him. Don't do any of the stuff. Here's the sanctioned thing you can do. You can pray for him. You can't control the outcome of what happens. You got to put it in my hands. Tension, 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 tension. Constant, constant, constant. Then when we get to heaven, where everything all makes complete and total sense, and we're not in this weird, crazy place anymore that has been made crazy by sin and a whole host of other stuff. Not only will it be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Everything's great. God's being like, okay, and now here's your reward for completing the hot mess obstacle course. Congratulations. Like, it makes total sense. And then also, the fact that it's based in faith, because again, which I think I've said in a previous video, it's like, faith is something we can all do. Has nothing to do with your age, your race, your abilities, whether you're in a wheelchair or not, whether you could probably be in a coma and do this. So this is something we all have in a measure. You're using your faith, and it's it's not based on your abilities or anything. Um, and it's like, it's totally God's system. It's not any of our system. And that's another thing that I've been thinking a lot about is just that emphasis on God wanting a fully God product to be used. And like I was thinking about like Abraham and Isaac, and like this whole idea of Ishmael being the firstborn son, but it was like he was born of human will, meaning they came up with this idea. It's like, oh, God's gonna give me a son. Well, let's help him along. And here's my handmaid or whatever, and you can have a child with her because I'm barren. And so they created this child, and God is like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, and the reason why it wasn't just like, this isn't what I said. It's like, you're barren. This child shouldn't even exist. He's got to he's working through humans in a way that shouldn't be possible. And that's what he wants to use. And the fact that he's been doing this since like the dawn of time, it's just showing like he's just consistently like, listen, if humans could do this, it ain't me. It's like the person's got to have been dead, flatlined, you know. Then I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna even start until you are completely and fully out of the running as could be possible. And then after that, you're gonna have to believe that that is real or not. You're gonna have to decide to believe that, because obviously, since I used all dead things and then I made sure everybody was watching when it happened, and nobody else could be involved. Now you got to go, okay, well, this shouldn't even be possible. This isn't even allowed to happen. Did this happen? Am I hallucinating? It's like, so that's what he's using. So he's wanting to use, so Isaac was the promised child, not just because he literally was like, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to do it, not you. But it's like, he's working, it's got to be fully him. He's using us, but it's fully him. And that's the hallmark. So I don't remember why I said that, but I'm pretty much done. So yeah, so I've just been thinking a lot about that, and just like the tension is always going to be there, because when there's tension there, there's an opportunity there for you to surrender, and your intention, not the same word, not even the same root, but if I was a preacher, I would be probably leaning into that more, about tension and intention, thinking I'm saying something really profound. But anyway, y'all would know the difference. But anyway, but your intention is what matters to God. It's all of that inner stuff, your mind, your thoughts, because that's real stuff. Whatever you're doing on the outside is like that. You could be doing anything for any reason. So when you surrender to that, like, God can feel that. Things will start to happen when that surrender happens. You can't even force yourself to do it. It's like, oh, I know this is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it. It's like, that's another reason why things are so low key. And it's like, okay, well, Jesus died, he didn't save himself, and God didn't either. That's it. And then it's like, he's not going to help you at all. He's not going to help you until you start to move toward him. Then he's going to come and snatch you. But you got to make that first move. And you're not, there's nothing, you're not going to be able to grasp onto anything and go, well, technically, it's like, no, it's dead. And you go, well, I believe anyway. And it's like, oh, no, it's alive. Look at that. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh. That was, and it creates a personal moment between you and God, and that relationship starts to be forged. And when you have that, then when people go, you look insane, you can be able to stand, because it's like, listen, I know what happened. There was no reason for this to happen how it happened. God personally showed me himself. And people were like, really? Because it looks like you just followed some nonsense thing. And like, because the world is going to come against you. And if you came to believe intellectually, I mean, not that intellect doesn't help at all, but like you got to do something afterwards. You can't just, the intellect thing is to draw you, but like you have to do something. You can't just go, oh, I got my intellect thing, because someone can come and like kick that crutch from underneath you at any point. So, um, it's a good starting place. You need that freaking step stool of intellect, but then you got to do something after that. You can't just leave it there. You got to do something faith based. So that's, and I mean, that's the majority of how Christians come to God. They're like, they get to the end of themselves and they're like, I can't do anything. I can't I can't turn the situation around. I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. I don't know anybody. I am done. I don't, and then it's like, okay, well, if there's anybody up there, and then slowly but surely, or immediately, either way, it's like you instantly get a phone call. Something that this happens, whatever, or you just feel complete peace and joy. That's another thing that I was thinking about. Is like I'm always like just marveling about, like I was talking about slavery earlier, like American slavery, and it's like that first generation of slaves becoming Christians. I mean, that was just like a peanut butter and jelly, just a classic combo. I mean, black people and Jesus go together like chocolate chips and cookies. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, how can you even have one without the other? And I mean, it was very, a lot of those early, they used to have like, early accounts of, I don't know, this is like 20 years ago. I'm sure they still exist, but they just don't really spend a lot of time on them anymore. But, these early Christians and just how they were just basically like spiritual, like ninja, like it was just so insane. Like it was insane. And they would just be like, like I did the things I remember reading. Like, can you imagine like a slave going up to you and being like, listen, you're my brother and you shouldn't be doing this to me. But I'm going to surrender and God's going to forgive you. And the slave master being like, okay. Like, he doesn't care. He came from a Christian culture. He doesn't know what that means. Like, just insane. And just how God was like, listen, you're a slave. I can't really get you out of this situation because their free will is to enslave you. But here's what we're going to do. How about the Holy Spirit, I'm going to have the Holy Spirit come. It's going to give you all the peace and joy that you would have if you were actually free and could do your own thing and worked all your life and all of that worked out. I'm going to just give you all those feelings now. As long as, it's like, if you're going to be connected to the vine, then this is what you're like. That's what it was, guys. Like, I don't, that used to be common knowledge. I don't know if anybody would believe that anymore because it's just been all whatever, but that's what it was. But, a couple generations go by and they go, why are we doing this like this? Like, what is this? They don't understand God. They don't understand any of that stuff. So, which is natural. I mean, that's what happened to every Israelite. I mean, just intense miracles and things that they've seen with God. And it's like, God would be like, and when, we're going to do this feast. And when your children ask, like, why we do this feast, you tell them it was this and this, and it didn't matter. Within 4 or 5 generations, it was all like, what? And everybody was serving other gods. But that doesn't mean not to do it. That's just the nature of our fallen state. Anyway, obviously, I'm not even surprised that it's as long as it is because I haven't made a video and I don't be making them. So I just had a lot of crap to say. But anyway, yeah, I was thinking about all that. So, I don't know. I feel like, as far as Rapture watches goes, like I know it's still high. Like it's never not, but it's super high this next couple of days until the 31st, and then I think the next one is like the 11th. Um, but yeah, I'm always like, yeah, we're gonna be done here in a little bit, but so I may or may not see you again later. Is basically what I'm saying with that. Okay.